Back here on HQ Spotlight, Big 12 Media Day is quickly approaching. Tomorrow from Dallas, I think technically Frisco. So I'm sorry, Texas people, don't come after me. If you still want parity in college football, the Big 12 is the conference for you. And to quote one of our colleagues, Shahan Jayaraja, he says the Big 12 is where floors and ceilings swing wider than any other conference. Getting a look at the odds to win it. Kansas State, Utah, Arizona State, all up there at 6-1, followed by Baylor, Texas Tech, and TCU at 8-1 to win the Big 12. All right, let's welcome in our college football analyst, Chip Patterson. We're going to go through a handful of teams, 6 to be exact, in the Big 12, Chip, and you're talking best case and worst case scenario for these teams in terms of a schedule prediction. So let's start with primetime in Colorado. There's been a lot of hype around this team, of course, over the last 2 seasons, but there's no more Shedeur. There's no more Travis Hunter. So what is the best case scenario for the Buffs?
Best case, Jacqueline, is going to be an 8-4 type season, the kind of year where is Colorado contending for the Big 12 title like they were 1 year ago with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter? No, but they are at least solidly a bowl team, and a lot of that 8-4 best case scenario will be having to take advantage of those non-conference opportunities. The fact that Georgia Tech, a very formidable opponent, will be coming to your house in Boulder to start the season. You've got to defend home turf. You've got to be able to take advantage and win that game. You've got to make sure you don't get knocked off by a plucky Wyoming team that has been a thorn in the side. But those 3 wins, Delaware included as well, could be able to give them an opportunity to be about 500, which is the best case scenario for me. Now, whether it's Juju Lewis or Caden Salter at the quarterback position, you're talking about a step down at quarterback. And offensively, we are also talking about a step down at the wide receiver position where you are losing Travis Hunter, yes, but also the number 2, number 3, and number 4 wide receivers from last year. It's a lot to replace. It's not just those 2 stars. I think the defense will be good enough for them to be able to have a winning record in Big 12 play, but 8-4 really seems like the best case scenario.
All right, and let's go to Texas Tech because we showed the odds and they're on the favorable side there as it comes to the Big 12, arguably the best pass rush in the country here. So what is the floor and what is the ceiling when it comes to the Red Raiders?
I mean, the ceiling is the roof. I mean, the way they are spending around Lubbock, one of the top recruiting classes in the conference, one of the top transfer portal classes in the conference. I've got my realistic best case scenario at 10-2. That would be the record that would have them competing for a Big 12 title, the Big 12 title that they've coveted. It would also be a big step up in the wins that they've gotten under Joey McGuire as they've kind of built to this moment. Now, in terms of the floor, I do think that all the talent acquisition that they have done, which even included in the spring portal window, adding someone who I think is one of the best defensive players in the country in David Bailey coming out of Stanford. Now, I think that they are going to be worst case 7-5. So we're talking about a very small window between my best case of 10-2, worst case of 7-5. But when you have the Jimmies and the Joes, which is exactly what Joey McGuire has done, I think it is very, very unlikely that we see this Texas Tech Red Raiders team even flirting with any lack of postseason eligibility.
And they're taking on Kansas State on November 1st. Let's talk about the Wildcats here. Their quarterback, Avery Johnson, expected to make some huge strides in year 2. However, there is a revamped O-line there for Kansas State. So this floor and ceiling looks kind of similar to Texas Tech for you, Chip.
Yeah, I think the ceiling's higher. I think that Kansas State can go 11-1. Avery Johnson was a Heisman dark horse type player going into last season, which made the results disappointing. Didn't do a good job of taking care of the ball. Didn't do a good job of having consistent performances, stacking good games on top of each other. Now, there were some injury issues, and that's always going to be there, but I still think that this is a Wildcats team that, based on the bones under Chris Kleiman, should be able to go out there and take care of business, and that's the reason why they are one of the co-favorites in the conference. And like Texas Tech, like you mentioned, there are just too many games where Kansas State is going to be a favorite, and in many cases, a heavy favorite, to think that Kansas State's not going to be 7-5 at the absolute worst. I'm looking at the fact that they do get that FCS North Dakota game. I'm looking at the fact that they play an Arizona, a UCF. I know that Shahan, by the way, spot on. Floors and ceilings very much swinging wide in this conference, but there's a couple schools you want to see. It's that year 1 Scott Frost UCF, very much still in rebuilding mode. It's a West Virginia. It's Arizona, which has been depleted over the last couple of years. And Kansas State gets a lot of them. I tell you what, they are very upset with how last season went. great bounce back opportunity, highest ceiling in the conference, the Kansas State Wildcats.
All right, a team they are very happy with how last season went. That is Arizona State, coming off of that magical CFP run. The schedule isn't a cakewalk necessarily. They have Texas Tech, Iowa State on there. So let's start with the good. What is the ceiling for the Sun Devils, Chip?
I've got the ceiling at 10-2. I do not think that they are bulletproof to be able to roll through and get a 12-0 or an 11-1. There's just too many other contenders on this list. You see that Iowa State, you see that Utah, you see that TCU. The margins are going to be very, very thin for this Sun Devils team. But what do they have? How about the preseason Offensive Player of the Year in quarterback Sam Levitt? They've done a good job in the transfer portal being able to back up some of the losses. You said goodbye to Cam Scatteraboo, but you went and got a great, and I say great, player in Kanye Udo coming out of Army. And so this is an Arizona State team that rightly is going to consider itself a Big 12 championship contender. Worst case 7-5, best case 10-2. This is the cream of the crop in the conference. I don't think anyone is going to be 12-0 because the margins are so small. But those teams at the top are there for a reason, and it's because they do have a very high floor.
Let's talk about Utah. Finished 5-7, their first losing season since 2013. They got a lot of a new quarterback, a new OC. So how do you feel about the Utes, Chip?
I am excited because the luck that they've had on the injury front has been horrendous. You mentioned 5-7 last year, 8-5 the year before. I mean, bodies everywhere. Just a real mash unit of a football program. And now you've got the changes you just mentioned. Not only Devin Dampier, very exciting quarterback coming over from New Mexico, but the new offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, is coming with him. So you're not asking a quarterback to learn a new system. Kyle Whittingham, defensive coach, kind of handing the reins over. And Kyle Whittingham has already announced that he will retire at some point. He's already named his successor, Morgan Scalley, the defensive coordinator. Whit's been one of the steadying presences in a coaching community that always has turnover. I am very curious to see what we're going to see from Utah this year. Got best case 10-2. I've got the worst case 6-6. You will note that that is a bit lower than some of the other schools. It's because they have a tough in-conference schedule where they are going to be playing a lot of the other contenders. Talking about like a Texas Tech, an Arizona State, a Kansas State, all those teams showing up, as well as tough road trips to Baylor and Kansas. It is very possible that the new offense does not click. It's another year where they just have to ride defense and special teams. But even in that scenario, the worst case scenario, I've still got them bowling at 6-6.
All right, and a reminder, you saw it there on the schedule at Wyoming, on CBS Sports Network. All right, finally, we're going to talk about Baylor, arguably one of the strongest offenses in the Big 12, but the schedule is not very kind. They play Auburn, SMU, Arizona State, Kansas State, and TCU by mid-October. So with that in mind, we'll go worst case first, Chip. Worst case scenario, and then we'll get to the best case scenario for the Bears.
Yeah, worst case is 6-6, and you've got it nailed. I just think we're talking about one of the better offenses. And how about this? They have to play Auburn and SMU. You're right. But what about Auburn and SMU have to play Baylor? Because the Bears have almost as much returning production as anybody else in the entire conference. And that starts with quarterback Sawyer Robertson, who made huge leaps and bounds with his production last season. Not only is he back in the fold, and they were able to keep him from leaving it through the portal, but the offensive coordinator there, Jake Spavital, is as well. Dave Aranda, as a head coach, has had a little bit of an up and down. He makes the Big 12 title game and is very early in his career, but then he's gone through a lot of coordinators. That coordinator shuffle, just can't get the right people together. Now they've got a staff that finally has continuity. They've got a depth chart that finally has continuity. I would not be surprised at all if Baylor is going to be right back in the mix for the Big 12 title. So I've got a worst case at 6-6. Tough schedule, best case 9-3, but that could be a 9-3 with a conference record, still good enough to contend for the Big 12 crown.
Chip, we certainly appreciate it. Previewing the Big 12 as we look ahead to Big 12 Media Days, again kicking off tomorrow from Texas. You can hear more from Chip on the Cover 3 podcast. Right now, there's Cover 3 Summer School episodes that are in your feed, the latest episodes targeting Maryland and Tennessee. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen or listening to wherever you find your favorite podcasts.